All right, welcome to Talking Investing. I am Tom, and as always, this is not financial advice. Today, I want to talk about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. This is a weekly update. Bitcoin once again had a historic week last week, so I want to talk about some new records that Bitcoin broke. And then I want to go through the Bitcoin miners. While Bitcoin is off to the races, the Bitcoin miners are still lagging behind. So we're going to take a look at a bunch of charts that go through all of those things. In addition to that, we're going to take a look at some other stuff relating to Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ETFs, and what we might be able to expect ahead. So before I get going, I want to thank everybody. We just recently reached 20,000 subscribers on the channel. If you're new here, if you're interested in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners and you enjoy that kind of content, consider subscribing to the channel. Also, if everybody could please smash the like button. We're going for 700 likes. I want to thank everybody also for helping us with smashing the like button. It's making a gigantic difference for the channel. So welcome everybody. Let's talk about Bitcoin. Okay, before we get to our normal charts, I just want to take a look at the Bitcoin chart itself for a minute. I'm going to start with Bitcoin on the 1 week time frame. So this is Bitcoin on the weekly time frame, and you're going to see this second candle here was the weekly candle that just closed. So this closed last night, and it closed over $69,000. That is the highest weekly candle close of any week in the history of Bitcoin. So that is another record that Bitcoin has broken, and it didn't beat it by just a little. It beat it substantially. You have to go all the way back to November of 2021 when Bitcoin had a weekly candle that closed at 65,500. That was the previous all-time high. So again, we smashed that record. This week that just ended over $69,000. So Bitcoin continues its run to the upside. It continues to break record after record. It is only Monday morning as I'm making this video, and there's already been another big move to the upside. We did get over 72,000 within the last few minutes, so we'll see if that holds in the short term. But just to put things in perspective as we keep going, from Bitcoin's lows of the crypto winter, which was around November and December of 2022, so that's maybe 15 or 16 months ago, Bitcoin's up 360%. So this has been a gigantic bull run. The question is, how much is left to go? And historically speaking, we're going to talk about why this really should be the beginning of the next leg up. With that said, let's take a look at what Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners did over the last week, year to date, over some other periods. And there's going to be a common theme here as Bitcoin continues to run and rally. The Bitcoin miners are in a bit of a slump. This has happened before. We're going to talk about that. So let's take a look at week over week. So you can see, as always, in gold, Bitcoin was up 10% last week. So there were only two Bitcoin miners that outperformed Bitcoin on the week. A 10% move to the upside is another gigantic week. We had Cypher, which reported earnings last week, and the market viewed that very favorably. So they had a 27% move to the upside that one day. Net of the entire week, they were up 14%. CleanSpark continues to rally. They were up 13%. Those are the two Bitcoin miners that did better than Bitcoin. When we get to larger time frames, you're going to see that CleanSpark is running away from the field right now. BitDeer was up 9%. Core Scientific was up 7%. That has had a few good weeks in a row. Mawson was up 1% and Gree was up 0%. Everything else was down on the week, so still the majority of the Bitcoin miners in the red on a week where Bitcoin was up 10%. So for perspective, that's one of the best weeks that Bitcoin's ever had. Bitcoin is a volatile asset, so it is prone to moves up and down like this, but 10% is a gigantic move. So to have this big move upside and once again have a lot of the Bitcoin miners in the red is another tough week for the Bitcoin miners. You can see most of these were down between 9 and 14%, and it's not just the microcap and nanocap stocks. Riot Blockchain was down 14%. They're the third largest market cap. Marathon was down 13%. They are the largest by market cap. The only large market cap that's really off to the races, again, is CleanSpark, which we're going to see in some of these other charts. Okay, here's Bitcoin year to date. So this is through March 8th. So we're just a little bit over 2 months into the year. So on this chart, it really jumps out that CleanSpark is really running away from the field. There is only one Bitcoin miner that is in the green. There's only one Bitcoin miner that's outperforming Bitcoin. CleanSpark is up 83% year to date. You're going to see Bitcoin here just 2 months and 1 week into the year is already up 65%, and this is as of last Friday. This does not include the move this morning, Monday morning. Marathon year to date is at 0. That's the second best performing Bitcoin miner. Bitfarms is down 8%, and then it just goes down from there, and you're going to see there's a lot of these down around 25%, a few of these in the 30s, and a bunch of these down over 40%. So I do think, as we've been talking about for the last really 15 months, I believe there will be winners and losers among the Bitcoin miners in this bull run, unlike previous runs where it seemed like all the Bitcoin miners were pretty much straight to the moon. Things are setting up a little bit differently. Bitcoin is a little bit more mature. The Bitcoin mining industry is a lot more competitive. There's 19 publicly traded Bitcoin miners that I follow. There's even a few more small ones past that. So I just want to zoom out a few more days. Okay, this is a chart that we've been following. We're basically 10 and a half weeks into the Bitcoin miners performing poorly. Before I go through this chart, I just want to talk quickly and remind everybody, last year in 2023, while in the course of the year, the Bitcoin miners were up dramatically, there was a 14-week period where the Bitcoin miners drastically underperformed Bitcoin anywhere from 40 to 70%. That lasted for 14 weeks. Now, at the end of that 14 weeks, most of the Bitcoin miners had a big recovery. So the question is history going to repeat itself here? Are we having another one of these runs where Bitcoin is doing one thing and the Bitcoin miners are doing the other thing? Their performances have diverged temporarily. Again, this happened for 14 full weeks last year, and then things turned around and the Bitcoin miners ran off to the races. So we're 10 and a half weeks into this. I don't think all of these Bitcoin miners are going to recover, but I would expect that some of these Bitcoin miners will pass Bitcoin by the end of the year, even though I think Bitcoin is going to have a spectacular year this year. So obviously that is just my opinion. It's important to reiterate, this is not financial advice. Right? I'm giving you my thoughts. I'm showing you a bunch of charts. We're trying to cut this up as many ways as we can and see if any information pops out or jumps off the page at us. So obviously, please do your own due diligence. I also like to take a moment out to just remind everybody, as these charts show, these are extremely, extremely volatile assets. So please be careful if you choose to invest in these, or if you are invested in these, please always be careful and understand the nature of the very high volatility involved with Bitcoin, and particularly with the Bitcoin mining stocks. Over the last 10 and a half weeks, Bitcoin is up 59%. Cleanspark is the only Bitcoin miner in the green, up 51%. And then again, you have all the rest of these in the red. The next best performing Bitcoin miner is Bitfarms, down 24%. We have a lot of these in the 40s, 50s, and 61% for Mawson over the last 10 and a half weeks. So if the Bitcoin miners are going to catch up, you can see they have an awful long way to go to catch up to Bitcoin's performance. From the top of this list to the bottom, you've got Bitcoin up 59%, while at the same time, a handful of Bitcoin miners down between 55 and 61%. So the key that I look for, is there any Bitcoin miner in any of these charts that you see lagging behind, where you think operationally speaking and financially speaking, maybe they're performing well and their stock is just getting beat up along with the rest of the companies? Okay, very quickly, I want to take a look at this chart. This goes back to July 14th. So this is all the Bitcoin miners' performance since July 14th, 2023. You can see in a 9-month period, still most of these Bitcoin miners are dramatically underperforming Bitcoin. So we do have, again on this chart, Cleanspark up 193% in that period of time. So Cleanspark has been the clear decisive winner really over the last 9 months. Bitcoin itself is up 130%. To put it in perspective, on July 14th, that week, almost every single Bitcoin miner hit a year-to-date high. So you can see it's been, for the most part, rough running for a lot of these Bitcoin miners for really 9 months now. There are only 4 of these that are in the green over the last 9 months. The rest of them are in the red. And again, I do think there's a group here at the bottom for these stocks that are down over 40% in the same period of time where Bitcoin is up 130%. To put it in perspective, Bitcoin was at roughly $30,000 back on July 14th, 2023. So again, this is really showing I do think there's going to be winners and losers in this space. In addition to that, I think we're in a window here where Bitcoin miners are lagging once again. So again, I try to look at this chart. Where's the potential opportunity and where are the pitfalls, landmines, and dangers? Okay, if we look at Bitcoin versus its previous all-time high, which was in November of 2021. So for the very first time, obviously, we are now back to Bitcoin's all-time high. So you're going to see Bitcoin at the top of this list is now 0% change. And again, you're going to see Cleanspark is the only one in that neighborhood. Cleanspark down 14%, so very close to Bitcoin's performance over that period of time. All the rest of the Bitcoin miners are down between 65% and 99%. So this is the one I think is the most telling. A lot of these in the middle or near the top of this group are the ones that I believe are going to really, again, this is not financial advice. You know, you guys have to make your own decision and do your own due diligence. But I would say these Bitcoin miners that are down still 90% to 99%, I would begin to worry that's possible these Bitcoin miners are not going to be quality investments going forward. Not to overstate what is potentially the obvious. Okay, I just want to take a minute and talk about the Bitcoin ETFs, because I do believe this is one of the main factors, actually the main factor, that's driving this acceleration to the upside with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is above its all-time high, and we're still almost a month and a half away from the halving. Bitcoin has never reached an all-time high prior to the halving, so this is a first, and I believe that this is the reason right here, the Bitcoin spot ETFs. So what I've done is put a chart together basically just of the last week's activity. You're going to see at the end of this chart, we've got inflows and outflows. So all 5 days last week, there were big inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs. Despite the fact, you'll see this column right here, Grayscale. Grayscale averaged over $300 million a day of outflows last week in the 5 days. A lot of this, I believe, is Genesis liquidating their $1.6 billion investment in Grayscale. They got court authorization to do so, so I believe that's what's happening. Since that's happened, there's been an uptick in the amount of outflow in the Bitcoin Grayscale Trust. Things had settled down a little bit. So if this trend continues, this is a lot of upward pressure on Bitcoin. This is massive demand pressure on Bitcoin, and there is less and less Bitcoin available on chain. So this is something we're going to keep our eye on. This, I do believe, is one of the biggest dictators as to which direction Bitcoin is moving in the short term. Also, I do think that these spot ETFs, these are nowhere near done running. I think this puts a lot of buying pressure, a lot of demand pressure on Bitcoin really for the next several years. So certainly through the rest of this bull market, I do think this is an additional catalyst. And I want to go through one more thing. Bitcoin just hit a new all-time high, which means it's finally back to its high from the previous cycle. So I want to show you what happened last time Bitcoin retook its high from the previous cycle. This goes back to December 16th, 2020. On that day, Bitcoin got up over $19,900. That was its high from the previous cycle back in December of 2017. You can see on this chart right here, 23 days later, Bitcoin doubled. It was actually up 110% in the 23 days that followed that. This is not something new. This is not an anomaly. The longest it's ever taken for Bitcoin to pull a double once it's regained its all-time high was less than 3 months. So pretty much somewhere between 3 weeks and 3 months, Bitcoin has pulled a double in each of the previous 3 Bitcoin halving cycles. So obviously that does not mean that that's going to happen this time. There are no guarantees in Bitcoin, but this has happened each and every time. But I would also note that one of the other things that's happened after Bitcoin has regained its all-time high, the level of volatility has increased both to the upside and to the downside. So whereas we have seen these quick doubles, we've also started to see big pullbacks, more like 30 to 40 to 50% pullbacks inside of these runs from the previous all-time high to a new all-time high. We do see even greater volatility with Bitcoin, and so as a function of that, also with the Bitcoin miners. So this is one of those situations where you just really want to be aware, whereas there may still be a lot of upside left. It's going to be a bumpy road, a very strong week for Bitcoin. So that's all things Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners over the course of the last week. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do enjoy this content, if you're interested in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, please consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, everybody, please do us a big favor and smash the like button on your way out. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you in the next video.